Welcome to Afterthoughts, everybody. This is our Part 2 Topic Talk episode on South by Southwest. I am John, and I'm joined by our film festival fanatic, Michael Dixon.
What's up?
Hey, and he's going to continue telling us a little bit more about South by Southwest. We want to get a little bit more into the weeds here and talk about the different categories that South by covers, some of the movies he saw within those categories, and really just give him some time to expand and open up, talk a bit more about those experiences and whether or not the things that we would want to check out, you would want to check out, I'd want to check out, who knows? So Dixon, why don't you kick us off? Just give us a little grounding here. What's the South by categories that they really break down for film?
Yeah, so there are lots of different genre categories at South by. I think I mentioned in our last episode that they focus more on comedy and music documentaries than other festivals. So they have, kind of more of those kind of things, but they break everything down into specific subcategories. The first of which is headliners, which are studio films that are premiering at South by that they're not eligible for any awards or anything, but like Dungeons and Dragons and Tetris and that kind of stuff. If they're showing like a Wes Anderson movie or The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent or Everything Everywhere All at Once, something like that, it's going to show at headliners. Those movies are showing at the Paramount with big crowds, lots of press, kind of a lot of to do about those. I only saw one movie from that category, which was an Asian comedy called Joyride. That was pretty funny.
You guys must be new to town, right?
New to town, but not new to the country. We just moved from California.
We just wondered if you wouldn't mind if your daughter played with our daughter.
Audrey, say hi.
You want to play slide?
Slides off limits to ching-chongs.
Fuck you. Do you want to be best friends?
It's interesting watching a comedy at a festival because a lot of times you're with a crowd that has just decided that it's going to be the funniest thing they've ever seen, like when they're walking into the movie. And so I liked it a lot, but there was a lot of laughter from the crowd around stuff that I didn't think was funny. And then it was like I missed lines because people were laughing at stuff. And so I want to give it another shot later. I liked it, but I kind of don't know exactly how I felt about it, but it was a good movie. It's a really strong cast. Stephanie Hsu is in it from Everything Everywhere All at Once. Seth Rogen was a producer on it. I was actually trying to find a seat in the theater, and I texted you. I was like, "Oh, there's a seat here that's reserved for Seth Rogen."
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I bet I told you like he probably went and got high right before, or was getting high, or is always high. Who knows?
Oh,
I'm pretty sure he's just like made of pot at this point.
Yeah, I didn't see him in the bathroom or anything, but who knows?
If there's a cracked window, he's been there. That's all we know.
But yeah, so that was good. Solid comedy. I'm interested to see. I'm sure it'll come out in theaters. Lionsgate has picked it up, so I'm sure that'll be in theaters in the coming months. So I'll try to see that again when it comes out and give it a shot. The crowd like absolutely loved it, and it was cool. Like it was a big Asian population in the crowd, and it was cool to see them really get into it and really love that movie and seeing themselves represented in that way. It's a female comedy too, so like it's a raunchy female comedy, which I like that those are becoming more in vogue now. So that was it was fun to watch that movie. The crowd really loved it, so I think that'll be one that'll do really well outside of the festival, especially since Stephanie Hsu has gotten so much acclaim from Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Yeah, just based on the trailer alone, it's something that I can tell was a crowd pleaser. It's there's good moments that it'll make you laugh in, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready to see it.
It follows some similar beats that you would expect around like it's a group of friends in their 30s who go on a trip together, and maybe they'll get in some fights and then they'll come back together and realize that how valuable their friendship is. And, like it does kind of what you expect it to do, but it does it well. So,
yeah. Oh, nice. Well, that's from the headliners. What else we got?
So the only categories where South by actually gives awards are the narrative feature competition and the documentary feature competition. It's a small group, only 8 films in each category. Is essentially, scripted and documentary films. So the narrative feature competition, I saw a couple of movies there that were both good. I watched the jury prize winner. It was called Raging Grace. It was my second favorite movie that I saw at the festival after Aberrance. And it's a pretty fascinating story about this housekeeper in London who is trying to get her visa to stay there. She has immigrated from the Philippines, and she's a single mother with a daughter who's maybe around 9 or 10 years old. And I have trouble telling how old kids are, but she hadn't hit puberty yet.
Okay,
and,
there you go.
They're, she's kind of going from job to job, trying to make enough money to try to pay someone under the table to get her a legit visa to be in the country. And they don't really have a permanent place to stay. And a lot of times she is staying at her customers' homes that she's cleaning and not telling them that she has a daughter, and just staying there when they're out of town and then cleaning up and leaving before they get there. And then she ends up kind of accidentally getting a job for this wealthy old man who lives in this massive estate, and he's very sick and in a coma, and his niece hires this woman Joy to be the full-time housekeeper and live in that place. Joy's daughter is named Grace. And so they're staying there. The woman does not know that Joy has a daughter, and so she's trying to kind of keep her hidden. The woman is giving medicine to this old man every day and won't let Joy do it. And she's like, well, I can do it. Like, I'm running the house. Like, you don't have to do that all the time. She's like, no, only I do it. Only I do it. Then she has to go on a vacation, and she's like, okay, I guess I'll let you do this and give him these meds while I'm out. Joy has a decent amount of experience giving people pills and realizes very quickly that she's poisoning this old man. And it gets kind of interesting from there. And there's a lot of kind of misdirections in how the story plays out. But it's a fascinating film. It's kind of horror adjacent, but more drama than horror, about, kind of classism and racism in colonial societies and how we treat immigrants, and even people who seem to be giving people a hand up to try to help them usually have ulterior motives, and maybe not you're not actually thinking with the interests of those people in mind. I don't really want to give anything away, but you think, oh, this woman's poisoning this person, she must be evil, and then if Joy tries to solve the problem, what happens there? What does that lead to? Does that create more problems than it solves? What kind of happens from there? So I thought it was a pretty fascinating story that kind of deals with a lot of these issues.
Wow. Yeah. It's one of those where you immediately think that's like my brain goes to that, like, would you kill baby Hitler moment?
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, you're poisoning this man, but like, what has this man done? And all of these other kinds of questions.
Mm-hmm. He's this rich old man who, old white British guy who lives in this huge mansion. I bet he's not. I bet there's something up with him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, oh, wow, that sounds fascinating. Raging Grace.
Raging Grace.
There you go. Well, what other categories we got?
Yeah, so the other category where there's an award given is the documentary feature competition. I saw the movie that won that prize was a documentary called Angel Applicant. It wasn't my favorite documentary. I've kind of talked about some documentaries that I liked better, but Angel Applicant is a very personal documentary, which I think is another way that you can kind of subvert the general documentary form and do something a little bit different. The documentary is made by this guy who has this rare disease where his immune system is attacking his skin and his joints. And it basically compares it to, like, he feels like he's turning into a plastic doll. Like, his immune system is attacking his skin and making it harden. And like his hands kind of turn into claws, and he's not really able to use them the way that you or I can. And he has this, like, a severe version of this disease that's affecting his whole body. Apparently, for most people that have it, it maybe only affects one part of the body, but his is affecting the entire body. So it's limiting his mobility in his legs and his face. His digestive system is starting to harden. His lungs are losing their capacity to bring in oxygen. And he's grappling with all this stuff, and he's making the movie about himself. And he comes across this artist from Europe who is, his name is Paul Klee, and he was going through the exact same disease that this guy is in, like, the 1930s. And he was a musician and an artist who was a violin player and all these things, and wasn't able to do that. In his younger days, he made these very intricate paintings that were very detailed. And then as his disease progressed, his paintings became kind of more broad strokes, and he wasn't able to be as detailed, but he was able to convey a lot of emotion into his paintings that reflected the pain that he was going through as he was dealing with this disease. And the guy making the movie was like, fuck, that's what I'm going through. Like, it's like, it's like this guy made these paintings for me. And he's dealing with his own experience, and you see him going to the doctor and getting these prognoses. Meanwhile, he's, reading up on this guy and learning more about his paintings and kind of using that as a form of therapy, essentially, to kind of understand what he's dealing with, given that this guy went through pretty much the exact same thing that he did. So it's almost like a lot of times disease documentaries are like, oh, really? Is that going to be a bummer? Am I just going to sit there and have to be sad for the whole time? And it's like, yes, to some degree. And like, I tend to not, that kind of thing doesn't bother me, but I know some people, kind of don't like to sit through that kind of stuff. But it's kind of half that and half art history lesson, which is a really interesting combination of things. And it's cool to see, kind of how he deals with his disease and how he uses that artist's work to kind of gain a new perspective on life. So
that's a really fascinating. Yeah, I prefer those kinds of documentaries where somebody finds a connection they never knew existed to a different piece of time using art.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to hear about. And that's the thing I dig for too when I listen to directors talk about films and filmmaking, the inspirations that they draw from, the things that really resonate.
Yeah.
Listening to somebody like Scorsese talk about the movies he watched in the theater when he was a kid and how that influenced him, or anybody else who kind of brings that up. Tarantino working in a video shop, that kind of stuff. It's tangential to that. I've discovered there's this a YouTube content or YouTube channel. It's not a content creator. I don't want to call it that because it's something way more to me, that I discovered that is in line with that kind of exposure to diseases and disabilities and that kind of stuff, called Special Books, Special Kids. They have a really low, it's not like low, but it's like hundreds of thousands of followers right now. And it's just this guy and his partner who have dedicated the past 8 years of their life. He used to be an educator, to going to somebody's house who is the family of, or is a person who has disabilities, and just talking to them for 30 minutes, like in a 30-minute interview where they solidly get to know them as a human being and actually expose you to their condition and ask them questions like, what do you want people out there to know? What do you want somebody to be aware of? And it's even gone so far as to have that guy has declared, like, I'm not going to do short form. I won't do TikTok because as an educator, I believe it doesn't do us any services in our attention span. And I don't think that it gives these people like the exposure they need for you to know what they're dealing with.
Yeah.
Just that kind of integrity and that kind of heart. I'm like, I love that. I love that in a documentary. I love that in any kind of presentation. I look for it because it educates me, really lets me know. So that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, I think personal documentaries tend to be my favorite kinds of documentaries. It's just kind of a radically different form of filmmaking when it's just like a person kind of bearing their soul and showing you their own life and their struggles. And, I thought this documentary was really good. It wasn't my favorite documentary at the festival, but I really enjoyed it and definitely recommend people check it out. It's called Angel Applicant.
Yeah. Sounds very similar to like Dick Johnson's Dead kind of thing.
Yeah.
With like that sort of touch where you're really trying to explore that.
Definitely a lot of similarities there.
Cool. Well, what's next on the list?
Yeah. So I talked about, there's the narrative feature competition and the documentary feature competition. And then there's narrative spotlight and documentary spotlight. And I'm not really sure, like, the narrative spotlight and documentary spotlight categories are pretty big. There's a lot of movies in there. They're not eligible for jury awards from South by Southwest. I don't really know how the festival determines whether you get put in the spotlight section or the features section. It doesn't seem to really have anything to do with the quality of the film. The vast majority of movies in the spotlight section are premiering for the first time at South by. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And so I'm not really sure how they make that distinction. But that it is a different section than the feature competition. So we'll touch on that briefly. The narrative spotlight section, I saw one movie there that I really liked called Down Low. It's a gay comedy starring Zachary Quinto as a divorced father who is living by himself in this massive house and kind of trying to deal with his homosexuality and how to kind of come to terms with that. And he's also has an inoperable brain tumor and is kind of trying to figure out how to live out the rest of his days with, his family's pissed at him, obviously, because he's come out of the closet and he's left them. This sounds very sad. It's not. It's a hilarious movie. The movie starts out with him inviting over a sex worker and ends up kind of getting along with this guy, but also he's kind of annoyed by him. And the sex worker discovers, oh man, you've never been with a man before. I'm your first one. Oh wow, this is wild. And he's like, oh, you got to get on Grindr. You got to do all this stuff. Here's what you got to do. He doesn't know that Zachary Quinto has a terminal illness. And so he's like, oh yeah, we got to get you set up here, do all these things. They get on Grindr, find some guy in the neighborhood who wants to suck dick and get him over to the house. And some crazy circumstances occur, and this guy falls out of the window and dies.
Oh no. Okay.
And the movie is Zachary Quinto and this sex worker trying to figure out how to dispose of this body.
Okay, wow.
So, there's a lot going on here, but it's a lot of fun. It's just like a, raunchy comedy that is just really going for it 100% the whole time. And I thought it was pretty great. Zachary Quinto is solid in it. A lot of the side characters are hilarious. The reason that I went to see it is because Simon Rex is in it. And he shows up later in the film as this absurd character that kind of offers to take the dead body off of their hands and may have strange reasons for why he wants this dead body. So it's a really good time. It's just a really fast-paced my favorite comedy that I saw at the festival for sure. And I don't know what the plan is for distribution, but I feel like it would get, it would be something that audiences would like. So I'm hoping that, somebody picks it up and that it gets some distribution, but also love that Simon Rex is getting more work now.
Yeah. After
Red Rocket, which was one of my favorite movies of 2021. So love that he's getting more work out there.
I'm glad to hear he's back.
Yeah, definitely. And the guy who plays the sex worker in the movie was really great. His name's Lucas Gage. I had never seen him before, but he's incredibly charismatic and really carries a lot of the film. He's kind of the eccentric to Zachary Quinto's straight man, and he was really great in the movie. So I think he could, be kind of a star in the making. It'll be interesting to see what happens with his career.
Okay. What do we got next?
Yeah, so the documentary spotlight, that was actually the category that I saw the most things in, just randomly. I wasn't actually trying to, focus in any certain area, but I ended up seeing 6 documentary spotlight movies. I already talked about Last Stop Laramie, which was my favorite documentary that I saw. And we both saw A Disturbance in the Force.
Yep.
So I won't spend too much time here, but kind of there's just like a lot of documentaries across the board that deal with lots of different subject matters and different things. And, some of these are going to be your more standard kind of documentary like Disturbance in the Force was. And some of them are going to be really great. So it just kind of depends.
Yeah, I gotcha.
From there, the next section is called Midnighters, which we touched on in the last episode. Aberrance was my favorite film of the festival. That was the only Midnighters film that I saw. Then the next one is called Visions, and that feels like a catch-all almost for just kind of weird movies that the festival doesn't know.
They didn't want to write miscellaneous into.
Yeah, the description on the South by Southwest website is Visions filmmakers are audacious, risk-taking artists in the new cinema landscape who defy traditional categorization in documentary and narrative filmmaking. So there are films here and there that have kind of a sci-fi edge or like a spiritual aspect, or there are some documentaries in it that are just kind of about odd subjects. It feels like, oh, this movie is weird. We don't really know what to do with it. We're going to throw it in Visions. Yeah. So you don't really necessarily know what you're getting there. My favorite movie that I saw in that section was called Chronicles of a Wandering Saint, which is about some old church ladies who are kind of competing to be the most pious person in their community, which I immediately identified with. And the lead character is very into, she thinks she's going to be the most righteous person by just cleaning the church floors all the time. And she's always in there scrubbing the floors. And the other old church ladies kind of think they're better than her. And they are in the choir and, running bake sales and that kind of thing. And, kind of don't appreciate the work that she is doing. She happens to stumble across a statue of a saint that has been stolen from the church 30 years prior. And she finds it in a back room in the church when she's cleaning, and it's just like under a bed sheet.
Oh my God.
And so she has this plan to bring it to her property and like display it as this miracle that it like just appeared out of nowhere. And she's trying to kind of stage this whole thing and make it out to be that, you know, she's this wonderful person. She tells the priest about it, and he's like in on the con with her to try to bring notoriety to the parish and all this. And she's going about this scheme. And in the process of doing this and transporting the statue around, she's driving down a dirt road, sees a dog in the road, turns to avoid it, and drives straight into a creek and dies.
Oh, wow.
Then the credits roll, actually, which I thought was kind of a funny bit. And the movie is not over at that point. It keeps going. And the main character has now died and is going through the bureaucratic process of ascending to heaven. And she meets all these people in the town that are like, actually, I've been an angel this whole time. And here's what you need to do now. Here's the paperwork you need to fill out in order to like apply to get into heaven. Like what afterlife package would you like? Yeah. Here's the benefits of them. Here's what they cost, all these things. And it kind of turns into a comedy, but it's still spiritual and kind of focused around this woman dealing with the end of her life and her legacy and kind of what she wants to leave behind. So it's almost it's a thoughtful spiritual drama and a comedy at the same time, kind of meshed together in a way that mostly works. There are parts of it where I wish it had leaned into the comedy side a little bit more, but for the most part, I liked it a lot. I thought it was a pretty interesting movie.
It sounds fascinating. It
Yeah.
sounds like a really cool, kind of funny comedy, but also, yeah, I could see it having meditations. It's kind of that thing is like a good comedy really has some sort of reflection on what you're doing and
for sure.
what life is about. It's not just like The Hangover. Well, awesome. What's another? Hit me with something else. What do you got?
Cool. So the next category is called 24 beats per second, and that is basically music documentaries. And so South by shows a lot of those. There's a lot of cool stuff there. I already talked about Revival 69. That was my favorite one. I also saw a Joan Baez documentary. It was fine. I don't know that it's really worth talking about. The next category is called Global, which is basically just world cinema from outside the U.S. I only watched one movie from that section. That was Kitazoa from Haiti. And we talked about that in the last episode, but highly, highly recommend people check that out. Then there's a category called Festival Favorites, which is movies that have premiered at other festivals that are then showing again at South by. And I saw one movie in that category. It's called Fremont. It's a black and white film, which I always think it's interesting when modern films are shot in black and white. And it's about an Afghani immigrant who works at a fortune cookie factory.
Okay.
Which I read that premise. I was like, yes, I want to watch that. And she works at a fortune cookie factory, and she's kind of trying to just figure her shit out and figure out. It's in Fremont, California. The movie's called Fremont. She's kind of trying to figure out how to exist in American society after having left Afghanistan due to the problems caused by America that have brought her here. And she's working at a fortune cookie factory, and she starts out as somebody who bakes and forms the cookies. And then she gets a promotion to the person who writes the fortunes. Oh. And so, it's like kind of talking about a complex issue through the lens of like a one sentence fortune, you know, which I think is an interesting idea. Didn't love the movie. I didn't think it capitalized on the fortune cookie premise to the degree that I would have liked to see, but I definitely enjoyed it and think it's worth checking out.
Interesting. Was it a short or did it?
No, it's like a feature film.
No,
Yeah.
I mean like in terms of runtime. Was it a short runtime?
It was probably like 90 minutes.
Okay, decent.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like it dragged on though. Like I feel like you would have
No.
noted that. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. What's
And
up?
it expands from there, but it's kind of that's the basic premise. But the next category is shorts. So there were 67 short films at the festival. There's 3 narrative short programs. There's a documentary shorts program, a midnight shorts program, a Texas shorts program, and animated shorts. And I saw the animated shorts. I always really enjoy animated shorts, and I like seeking those out at a festival when I go, because I just feel like it's a very experimental process for animators to try new things and to animate in fascinating ways that are different than what you see in your standard Pixar or DreamWorks film. Narrative shorts, I typically don't seek out narrative or documentary shorts because I would just rather watch a feature film typically with an idea that's more fleshed out than a kind of a short version. But I feel like that works to the benefit of animation and it kind of works to the detriment of more standard storytelling. So I like to seek out the animated shorts. There's one that was drawn entirely in pencil, which was really cool. There was one where there's just a piece of paper, and all of a sudden a human-shaped figure starts breaking out of the piece of paper and trying to escape. It's like stop motion, and it's a lot of really cool stuff. My favorite short was called Sandwich Cat, and it is it's about this guy who has a pet cat, and he wakes up one morning, and the cat has a sandwich over its face, like a fucking YouTube video or something. And the cat says, he starts talking to him. He says, "Hey, I'm an alien, and I have embodied your cat. And I'm here to examine your species and determine whether we're going to exterminate you or not." And so you have 24 hours to convince me that humans are not terrible. And, otherwise I'm going to kill all of you. And it's a really interesting story that you can tell the filmmaker is kind of focusing on his own life in the way that he has set the movie up. But it's pretty fascinating, and I really dug it. It's not a super innovative animation style, but it looks great, and I liked it a lot. They also showed one of the Oscar-nominated animated shorts called Ice Merchants, which I thought was kind of odd that they showed at South by because it was a 2022 short and it already got nominated for an Oscar. Yeah. But it's really good. It's much better than the short that won the Oscar, like The Boy, the Mole, the Horse, and the fuck, I don't remember. Like, that movie was not good. But Ice Merchants is actually really good. So I was glad to see it again. It was fun to see it.
You're talking about the Boy, the Horse, and the Fox, or something like that?
Yeah, it's like some animals. Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, or something. Yeah, it's not good. It's a J.J. Abrams project.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, it's really kind of fascinating. It's actually interesting that you talk about seeing the animated shorts and wanting to see that. I love animated shorts, obviously. Those are great times for creators to really cut loose and try their own hand at things. I think that some of the narrative shorts, like, I'm getting way more into narrative shorts recently, I find. I'm really fascinated to see more of, like, there's a local.
They can be really great.
They can be. It's kind of one of those things where, like, there's lower risk.
And for sure.
Potentially, like, higher rewards you can get from something that would be in a short versus something that was a short turned into, like, a feature length film. That's kind of like the one thing that I'm unsure of in my film experience is when the shorts become a feature length film, like that transition. Because I know I'm not sure if you've seen Cashback, but Cashback used to be a short film.
I haven't.
And the feature length one has some interesting things it builds on, and then everything else is really questionable and kind of like it just hasn't aged well for me. But I'm pretty fascinated to go and see some of those, especially with me going to some of the more hyperreal film club stuff here in town where they show short films beforehand. I'm getting more exposure to it and finding that there's a lot of, like, experimental play that I like in short films that I wouldn't like probably in feature length. So still figuring out my relationship with it. But hey, man, maybe the next film festival we tag team it and you go to the animation and I go to the live and we swap notes or something like that.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Cool. If I can ever get you to go to a festival with
I will go to the next, I swear. I'll do it.
And I like short films. It usually the only short films that I watch during the year, I always watch all the Oscar nominated shorts, and they do those short programs where you can go to your local independent theater and just sit down and watch all of the Oscar nominated live action shorts or the documentary shorts or the animated shorts. And I always do that and have a good time with it. But I always come away having a lot more fun with the animated shorts than I do with the other kinds. And occasionally there's stuff that I really like in the live action or the documentary shorts, but it's like one or two that like, oh, that was really good. But the animated ones, I'm just like consistently impressed by. And so I tend to like those more. But with festivals, I always try to seek out animated if I can, but I don't necessarily try to seek out the other forms of shorts, just basically because of my experience with the Oscar nominated shorts. And every year I go see those programs and I always fucking love the animated ones. And I'm like, there were some good ones, some bad ones in the live action and the documentary.
Yeah. obviously, like, I'm really enthusiastic now to just get into any kinds of shorts because I feel like that's
I'm more
been
of a
lacking
pants
in my
guy.
day. Yeah, we know. I'm thinking about cargo lately. But I'm always fascinated by the ability for like a short film to cut through certain like barriers that feature length films have to build up to. I'm kind of interested in that game of like, how do you make that swell, that same emotional impact that when you have way less time to do something like that. I watched one recently from a local filmmaker in Austin called Birds that is I can only describe it as kind of just like one of those hangouts, those like slow down and really like think about life sort of things. It's like 15 minutes long.
Is it a sequel to Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds?
No, there's already a movie for that called The Birds 2 that wasn't directed by Hitchcock, but
or Birdemic.
Or Birdemic, yes. Which they need to stop making those. There are 3 of them now, and they're
I did
all
not know
terrible.
that. I watched the first one and loved it.
Well, you've seen the second and the third one because you've seen the first one. They're all the exact same.
That makes sense. Yeah.
But
just like Windows 95 graphic birds.
Exactly. But yeah, the local filmmakers Birds is nothing like that, where it's just about like kids, like high school kids during summer having a good time in Austin. There's like Barton Creek or Barton Springs kind of stuff. And there's some other sequences of just like outdoor play, but all the while there's like technology in the middle of it. And it's kind of intertwined. It doesn't feel like old man yells at clouds kind of technology.
Yeah.
But they're like, these damn kids are always on their phones. It feels a lot more realistic than cynical or, that kind of, it was refreshing to see it. And I was like, that made me think a lot more about being in Austin. And I was like, wow, this short film had an impact on me just now.
That's
so
cool.
It was cool.
I always enjoy movies that are set here. And, I guess that's just like the Austin romantic in me that like, I'm just think it's cool to see this city in movies. Like Terrence Malick made that movie Song to Song a few years ago. It's not great, but it's set in Austin, and it's basically just like Austin porn. Like they go to all these famous Austin spots and have these scenes with, rich people falling in and out of love. That like, I don't care about any of these characters, but it's just shot so beautifully, and it's in all of these iconic places in town. I'm like, I've been there.
Yeah.
I saw it at Violet Crown, and there's a scene that takes place at Violet Crown. I was like, oh, fuck. It's like right out there.
I'm right here. Yeah, there's something about that like cultural pride of just like really enjoying that recognition. And I enjoy seeing it from other, cities and states too. Like,
oh, sure. Yeah.
Hey, any listeners out there, if you have a short film where you shot in your hometown, you're really trying to capture that essence, send it our way. Like, I'm really fascinated to see that and learn more about other locations and kind of like your vibe, what you're trying to capture. It's great.
For sure.
We've taken a little, tangent here, but let's get back on track. We got anything else to discuss here?
Yeah, so there's some other categories that I didn't see anything in that are kind of like not really film categories, but there's a music videos section that's just like there's one music video program that I didn't see, but I thought that was kind of cool that you can just go to a feature that's just a shitload of music videos all in a row. Like that sounds interesting. Like, innovative different approaches on music videos. I kind of wish I had seen that. Then they have an XR experience section, which is like I had to look that up.
Is that a mixed reality?
Extended reality, which is like VR, augmented reality, different stuff like that. And it's just like a room at the convention center that you can go to. It's just like showing all the time. You just like get in line and like put a headset on and experience these different things. I didn't check that out because I just like I want to see as many like traditional films as I can, and so I usually try to prioritize those. But at some point, I think it would be fun to check that out and see what they have there. I know you've had more VR experience than I have, so it might be something that you would be interested to check out.
There's some genuinely cool shit in VR that I hope to someday see somebody really utilize. Like I think maybe I'm on record somewhere saying that I would love to see Scorsese make a VR short or something like that, because it's kind of the dream, I think.
Like Goodfellas made from the POV of Ray Liotta?
I don't know about maybe like that. That'd be kind of cool. It's something that I think is really interesting, which VR does when it comes to video media, where you can force the viewer, the audience member, to be the cinematographer for their own experience. And you can let them play that again and again. Like there's I think it's not an Academy Award, but some kind of like award-winning short in VR called Henry. It's like a Pixar Pixar thing about a porcupine who wants friends. All of the friends always, if he wants to hug them, obviously they get spikes in them and shit. And so you kind of just get to hang out in his house while characters come in and out and have this experience of like trying to make him fit into the community. And you get to pick where you are. You can watch from the kitchen or like be in his dining room or like other things like that.
It's not a POV thing. You're just like a roaming camera.
You're a roaming camera, and it's not from him. It's literally, it's like being on the stage, in the stage when everything's happening. And there've been some experiments around movies that people have made where they make you the POV or they make you part of this ride to be part of it. And I just feel like there's so much more in that space we can do that. Right now, it's still just in such a novelty phase, and nobody has the vision to really step up and do something. I think one of the other fascinating, this is getting again into a tangent of shorts, but there's a VR short about like a lonely astronaut on a moon, and you just get the moon in front of you. Like the entire time you can just like look around it and watch where the characters are going, and you follow them, and either you can choose to stay static and see them come back, or you can actually try to trail what the action is happening. And it makes you think a lot more about the spatial awareness of how to make those shots line up. And those animations are so nuanced that you can miss them if you don't go to the location that they're in. It's fascinating.
That sounds like a cool way to kind of develop your own cinematic style. Like if you want to shoot a movie, to go into an environment like that and move around, like what is the right angle to shoot this scene, to get to emphasize the drama that's happening right now? What's the best place to put the camera?
Yeah, I would love to see more things like that become consumer available, because they use that for professional stuff now. Like that's how Steven Spielberg shot Ready Player One. He just put a VR headset on and did a bunch of this shit, and it still didn't come out well, but whatever. Yeah. And so but you can get like
that movie premiered at South by Southwest several years ago. I did not go to see that, but I saw it in theaters a couple weeks later, and goddamn, it sucked.
Everything but the Shining sequence was like, blech. The Shining sequence was kind of fun.
Yes, but I just watched The Shining.
Yeah, exactly. You know, at that point, just do whatever you're going to do there. But that's why I say somebody like, you know, a Scorsese who really understands, like when we watched Hugo in 3D and you understood that Scorsese knew what the depth was for. He knew how to use three-dimensional depth. That's the same kind of thing I want.
It wasn't just people reaching at you.
Yeah, it's not somebody, you know, like, oh, there's a poker coming right at your face or whatever the fuck.
It's like you're looking down a well and you can see all the way down and how far it goes.
Yeah, it would be great to have, you know, because VR can also simulate sensations if you are in it. Like you can get sickness or nausea if you're, you know, not doing something right, but you can also get the intense exhilaration of falling very easily. And there are other sensations that can happen because your brain's like, I'm just seeing it. So it's like, all right, when is this going to take off? I want this to be more than just, you know, Zuckerberg is this gross melted model at an office kind of thing. Yeah, maybe at some point, you know, that'll expand in South by and it'll become even more engaging and engrossing. And
you know, and I haven't seen any of the VR, AR, XR stuff at South by. So maybe if you go with me next year, we can check some of it out.
Yeah, that'd be great. What else we got lined up?
Cool. So the only other section, I didn't see anything in this section. This is going to shock you, John, but I did not see anything in the TV section of the festival.
I can't believe you.
I know. A lot of time was taken up at the Paramount from TV pilots, and I got kind of frustrated with that. I was like, oh man, like there's all these great movies here that I would love to see at the Paramount, but like I feel like seeing a TV pilot at a festival is just a very unsatisfying experience. You know, it's like, okay, like maybe that'll get me excited to watch this TV show that comes out 3 months from now. But like, it just feels weird to just experience the first installment of a multi-episodic show and to not really be able to engage with it beyond that. So I've never really understood the concept of TV festivals and wanting to go see that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of the stuff is, you know, big money TV shows that are already going to get put out on major streaming services that don't need to be at the festival, that South by seems to do that to like gin up notoriety, and it kind of annoys me.
Yeah.
But there's a independent TV pilot section of the festival where, you know, you can go see programs of just like a bunch of independent TV pilots that haven't been picked up yet that are there to try to get attention. And that sounds kind of cool to me, but also I'm like, oh, you could just watch a bunch of TV pilots that never turn into anything. And that sounds very unsatisfying, where you're just watching like premises for things where you don't get to see things play out. So I'm not a big TV person. I like movies much better than TV, so I'm going to gravitate more toward that naturally. But the concept of TV at festivals has always seemed weird to me, and I've always avoided it. So there was one though that I definitely want to watch, but like I know it's going to come out. I think it's on Showtime, so I'm going to have to fucking buy that. But Boots Riley has a new TV show.
Oh, hell yes.
Coming out about a 13-foot tall black man who is like protected and kept in his house because his family is like, what's going to happen if we let this guy out into the world? All hell's going to break loose.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's fucking Boots Riley. Like we both love Sorry to Bother You. And I'm really excited to see that whenever it comes out. But it was like, I don't want to just go see the pilot there because like I know I'm going to watch that when it comes out, and I want to use this time to see movies that I otherwise may not be able to see. So
yeah, I feel like I'd gravitate a lot more similar to how you already expressed toward seeing TV pilots that may never be. That's something that I've actually witnessed on TV at one point. Like I didn't realize a long time ago when I was watching Adult Swim, I was watching pilots for shows.
Oh yeah, they used to do that more often where they would actually put pilots on TV and see what ratings they would get before they would decide whether to pick them up or not.
Yeah, and now it seems like it's a lot harder for them to gauge what that's going to be with like YouTube and then all of the split of streaming services. It's like this, I guess, is their new attempt at, hey, how much interest can we really garner for something? And if it's big enough, they're like, sure. But if it's these other, hey, I'm going to pick this up. I remember there was an adaptation of a comic series that was like really scathing satire of nerd culture called Welcome to Eltingville. And it had a few folks in it. I can't remember the voice actors' names, but it was great. Like it's 20 minutes. The Adult Swim, I think, still has the pilot episode available somewhere. And it's hilarious. I thought it was really great. It touched on how like a lot of nerd culture is about gatekeeping. There's a lot of toxicity in it. It's one of those things that like right around the heat of like Star Wars Episode 1 and those things breaching was just taking down so much of that like pious nerd culture. And then it never got enough traction for it. And it was based on a really popular series that did the exact same thing. So I was like, wow, the animation was great for it too. So I've always wanted to see more of those. And I don't know, for me, I feel like there's a certain sweetness and having seen it and then being sad, but knowing that there was a cool creative force behind it, it at least launches me into following somebody else's career for those kinds of pilots, like in the indie section.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I want to watch what this person would make elsewhere. I want to know about that.
No, definitely.
So that's kind of like how I would, I guess next year when I end up going to South by Southwest, because you really continue to sell me on this, that I would probably check that out and see what if anything, there's something cool there. Obviously I'm not going to go see like, crime procedurals or shit if they're in pilot. I don't give a fuck about that.
You're right.
But
And you're not going to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like, it's not going to be
so.
a fucking CBS show about cops and lawyers and stuff. But, it's like there will be stuff there that like HBO has already bought, right? That's going to be online in a matter of months.
Yeah.
And it's like, what am I doing?
I highly doubt that a show with Elizabeth Olsen and Jesse Plemons is not going to get picked up. And,
exactly. I almost accidentally went to that because I thought I was trying to go to something at Stateside, and I accidentally walked up to the Paramount line because they're next door to each other. And then I checked into the line and said, yeah, you're here for Love and Death. And I was like, wait, are they showing the Woody Allen movie? What's going on? That movie's hilarious if you haven't seen that. But so I almost walked into that by accident. It's like, I love Jesse Plemons. It'll probably be a good show. Like Elizabeth Olsen is great. It'll probably be good, but I don't want to waste my time at the festival going to see that. So
yeah, I gotcha.
But that's cool. And that Boots Riley show, by the way, is called I'm a Virgo. So I'm very excited to see what that turns into. It's set in Oakland, like it's very Boots Riley, so I'm excited about it.
Nice. I can't wait to check that out.
But that's all the categories at the festival. So there's a huge variety of stuff. 110 features, 67 short films. Like there's so much stuff to see. They're like just the quantity of things is incredible. Like I talked about in our first discussion, kind of I tend to go for quantity over quality. That it's like I tend to go for quantity because you don't know what the quality is going to be, right? And like there's just so much good stuff. You never know. You walk into some random movie and maybe it wasn't something that caught your eye off the plot description, and then it just blows you away. And so you just don't really know. And there's so much to see, and there are very few things that are bad. At South by, the quality is very good, and so I think it's definitely worth, if you're in town or if this sounds interesting to you, it's definitely worth checking out and just going to random shit and seeing different things.
Yeah, this is the fun part for me of like film, is that exploration, that getting to know something before anybody else really tells you how to feel about it. And that way, like, I find that when I look at Rotten Tomatoes scores for things, kind of puts a sour taste in my mouth for even going into the movie. I have to wait until I cool down from that. And then I can be like, okay, fine, I'll go in now. And now that I know I'm distanced from that a bit. I just don't want any influence in my experience here. But if like I have a friend who recommends it to me or tells me, at extent, like, here's some things I think you'd like about it. Here's the kind of aspects that I liked about it. I'm way more favorable toward like, yeah, let's do that. I want to go see that. So sounds fascinating. I'm really curious because, again, I have no experience with any film festivals at all. How does South by stack up to other film festivals? What is it different about it?
Yeah. So, I have been to kind of most of the major festivals in town here in Austin. I've not been to Sundance, which is, kind of the premier American festival. I've not been to Telluride, which is probably kind of the second festival. But South by is definitely a big festival where a lot of big stuff premieres. I'd love to go to Toronto someday. I've heard really cool things about the Toronto Film Festival. And like, they show a lot of stuff from Venice and Cannes too. So you can see a lot of different shit there. So I'd love to do that one day. But as far as South by goes, as far as the local festivals here, we have South by Austin Film Festival, Doc Days, which is kind of an under the radar documentary film festival at Austin Film Society, and then Fantastic Fest is kind of the other one. And so I've never been to Fantastic Fest. It's crazy expensive, and it's just kind of like movies that I am not necessarily going to gravitate toward, it seems like. I haven't been, but it takes place 100% at Austin Films, at Alamo Drafthouse South Lamar. They shut down the theater for like a week plus and only show movies at that festival. But it's like $1,000 to go to the fucking festival, and it's like there's only one level of entrance, and I'm just like, I'm not spending $1,000 to go see a bunch of genre films. It's like, it's all genres. So it's, sci-fi, horror, that kind of thing. And I'm sure there's stuff that's cool. Like Color Out of Space premiered there. And I saw Tammy and the T-Rex there, actually. Like shortly after it was restored, they did a screening there. But I just bought a single ticket to it and like happened to be able to get in. That's the only screening I've ever been to at Fantastic Fest. So I don't have a lot to comment there, but it's not affordable to go to as a local. If you're in the industry and you're in those genres, like, I'm sure it's cool, but I've never gone. So the festivals that I go to a lot are South by Austin Film Festival and Doc Days. And so South by is in March every year around spring break. Austin Film Festival is in late October. And Doc Days is usually May or June. They didn't have it last year, which I was very disappointed by. And I'm hoping they're going to bring it back. But one of my favorite, I mean, I like all those three festivals, but they all have different aesthetics. South by, I mentioned, kind of almost every movie you see is going to be good. And sometimes you may be really blown away, but that's going to be rarer, that a movie is going to be like, oh wow, this is one of the best movies I've ever seen. But that does happen at South by. Again, For Sama is one of my favorite movies I've ever seen. Best documentary I've ever seen. But the quality generally is pretty good. Austin Film Festival is really interesting because you have two types of films that show there. The first type are films that have premiered at really big festivals internationally, Cannes, Venice, Toronto, Telluride, different places like that are getting runs at Austin Film Festival to kind of bring notoriety to the festival and to get critics to come out, get press, things like that. And then you have films that are premiering at Austin Film Festival that are like the obscure of the obscure. And a lot of those movies are not good, but some of them are incredible and you will never see them again, I guarantee it. And so I try to mix up my plan when I go to Austin Film Festival. I try to see some of those bigger ones. Like I saw Worst Person in the World there, and that didn't come out in theaters till like February of the next year. So that was really cool that I got to see that, 4 or 5 months before it came out to the general public. And those type of movies are really fun to see there. It's also less crowded than South by Southwest. So if you're just a film lover, you like seeing stuff, you can buy a film pass for $75 and go to all the movies. and you don't get into any of the panels and shit, but you can go to all the movies. They all have Q&As and stuff, and it's pretty cool. The Whale was the opening film there this past year. I got to see a Q&A with Aronofsky and the screenwriter there. So there's a lot of stuff that kind of stuff is typically, on average, I would say better than what shows at South by, because you're seeing stuff that has gotten a lot of notoriety at other festivals, that has already gotten distribution. It's shooting for awards later in the year. Some of that stuff is absolutely great. Other stuff that's premiering at Austin Film Festival, some of it is pretty bad, pretty rough to sit through. But you just don't really know what you're going to get. I've seen some movies that are absolutely god awful at Austin Film Festival, but I've seen random ones that absolutely blew me away. There's a documentary that I saw there a few years ago called A Girl Named C, and I've been seeking it since then. It was like the 2018 Austin Film Festival, and I've not been able to find it anywhere since then. And I decided to go see that instead of Green Book, and I'm very glad that I did.
But you'll never know the joy of Green Book.
Oh, I saw Green Book later.
Okay.
Did not like it. But A Girl Named C was this fascinating documentary about this girl who had been sexually abused as a young child, and as a teenager was beginning to relive those moments and was going through therapy and started to remember these horrible things that she had experienced. And she had suppressed those memories, but at the time when she was a young girl, she had drawn out a lot of the things that she had experienced. And the documentary is told by animating the drawings that she made as a young girl. And like one of the coolest storytelling methods that I've ever seen. I fucking loved it. I saw it at like a church downtown. That like Austin Film Festival, the venues are sometimes a little bit smaller. They're at the Paramount also, which is great. Fucking love that theater. But then the other venues tend to be a little bit smaller, like, you know, the St. David's Episcopal Church on 7th Street. Just like, you know, they cut off a room there and you watch movies there. And some of them are about things that the church would definitely not be happy as showing there. But there's stuff like that I'm like, oh my God, I love that. I can't wait to see that again. And you're never able to see it again. And it's kind of a beautiful experience in that it's there and it's gone, and I can never find that again. And it was so good. But it's also kind of frustrating at the same time, you know, that I can't get back to it. There's other movie that I saw there, I think in 2017, that I fucking loved, that I was just like, it was like a South African film about childhood that was just incredible. Like about these kids who were building a spaceship to go to the moon. And it was so good. And it's gone. I don't know where it is, where it's ever going to be. So it's a different type of experience there, where like, if you go to some of these big movies that are going for awards, it could be really great. It could be Green Book, but you know, it's in that type of spectrum of things, from the worst person in the world to Green Book of the like awards movies. But then you have the stuff that's, you know, very obscure, that it's probably never going anywhere, but it's so fun to me to just have that experience, to go see all these things. And I know going in, like, I'm probably not going to like most of these, but the ones that I do are going to like stick with me for a long time, because it's going to annoy me that I can't watch them again. And it's going to have, because of that, it's going to have an outsized experience on me for that one viewing that I know I can't get afterward.
Yeah. That's fascinating to think on. I feel like we get two different things out of film festivals here, because the more you talk about movies that are obscure or movies that are bad and obscure, you probably already know that I would love to watch whatever those are. Yeah. Because I basically, at this point, I'll admit it, I'm basically a filmmaker who's never made a film, where I'm just way more fascinated at watching other filmmakers try and fail and seeing like what they could do, because I'm like waiting to make my move. Yeah. But that's definitely like, I feel like there's a lot of overlap in what we would go see, and then there's these other extra, like on the kind of outskirts here, where we would have discussions that were kind of fascinating, where we're trying to tell each other in like different languages, even like what this is or what this film might be. Yeah. That's fucking fascinating to me. So I'm excited now to go to a film festival, to actually get that happening this year. It's already like, we're already way past the New Year's resolution point, but that's my fucking New Year's resolution, is that I can actually get into the swing of film festivals. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. You should come with me to Austin Film Festival. It's always like, it's a weird time because it's always at the end of October and it always straddles into November. And like as a professional accountant, I can very rarely take off during the changeover to a new month.
Yeah.
And so I usually can't actually take off and fully experience it. I have before taken off work during South by and just gone to like 30 movies.
Yeah.
And that's a really fun experience. I've never been able to do that for Austin Film Festival. I would like to do that at some point. But as long as I'm in this profession, it's hard for me to be able to do that. But usually it's $75 for a film pass. It's such a good deal. And, you go see 5 movies and it's paid for itself. And so I'm usually going to see 2 movies every night after work. And like during the weekends, I'm just all day at the theaters. So, yeah, it's super fun. The other festival that I really like in town is called Doc Days. And again, it didn't happen last year. I really hope that it does happen in the future, but I don't know if AFS will keep doing it. But it's a documentary film festival that takes place at Austin Film Society. And it's typically like a 4-day thing, like Thursday through Sunday. And it doesn't overlap with traditional working hours. It's like Thursdays, there's usually 1 premiere film at night. And then there's maybe 2 films Friday night, and then all day Saturday and all day Sunday. And there's only 1 screening for each one. And they don't overlap at all. And so it's very relaxed, and it all takes place at the same location. So Austin Film Festival and South by are frantic. Like you're running around town, going to all these different screenings. And there's a fun energy about that, but it gets exhausting doing all that. And Doc Days is so relaxed. Like you just hang out at the same place in North Austin, outside of the hustle and bustle of downtown. And you just see all these cool movies. And, Austin Film Society sends their people out to all these different festivals around the country. I saw one of the programmers at a South by screening this week. Yeah. So, they're out seeing stuff everywhere, and they bring back the best documentaries that they saw to Doc Days. And it's usually, 7 to 10 movies that they show. They all have Q&As, sometimes via Zoom call if it's a foreign film and the director couldn't get over there. Yeah. But it's really cool. And there's always enough space. There's 30 to 45 minutes between screenings. You can like duck out and get some food and come back and, if you need to. But it's a lot of fun. It just has such a different vibe. And if you buy a pass to the festival, you get a guaranteed seat to every movie. So you can buy individual tickets, but if you have a pass, like you're for sure getting into every screening. There's no rush to get in line or any of that stuff. So
yeah, nice. Oh man. Well, yeah, I'm curious to hear out there if we have any listeners that have their own film festivals they would recommend, or their own approach and strategies to how they get into their film festivals, those kinds of things. It's always fascinating to swap notes and try to get into the headset of like, hey, what's this perspective? How are we going to go and see these movies? What do we do? Do you all out there try to index on quality over quantity? Do you dare?
I just think it's hard to tell what the quality is going to be.
Exactly.
You might as well see more things.
I want to know what the heuristics are for trying to assess that it's quality over quantity.
And if anybody has other opinions about the local festivals, would love to hear them. If anybody has been to Fantastic Fest and has thoughts on that, and thinks I should drop a grand to go check it out, let me know. I probably won't do that, but I'm interested to hear, because I just don't have firsthand experience to Fantastic Fest. But if you have been to other festivals around the world, would be super interested to hear those things. I know one of our listeners, is in Toronto and has been to Cannes, so it'd be interesting to hear from Matthew to see hear his thoughts on those festivals.
Yeah, hey, maybe even bring him on at some point and give him a little inquiry
definitely
about that if he gets into another film festival soon. That would be great, Matthew. If you're out there listening, we'd love to have you as a guest at some point. Get in touch with us; it'd be awesome. But yeah. Well, I feel like we've exhausted the South by Southwest conversation. It sounds like it's been an exhausting film festival to attend, especially with certain banks failing.
Yeah. I didn't get to see as many movies as I wanted. I saw a lot of movies, but I didn't get to see quite as many as I wanted to, because over the weekend I was on the phone with bankers and like submitting claims to the FDIC. So that was not fun. But,
yeah. Sorry you had to go through that, buddy. But I'm glad you still got to go to South by.
I didn't sleep very much in the last week. I was working or I was at movies, but it was fun. I had a lot of fun at South by. So
Awesome. Well, yeah, is there anything you want to close out with? You'd want to say to the listeners about film festivals? Any kind of words of encouragement for folks that are curious about it? Or do you feel like we've said all there is to say?
I would just say, like, if you live in a place that has a local film festival, just go check it out. You know, I've never been disappointed going to a film festival. You know, I would imagine if you live someplace that has a festival, if you're a local, it's probably fairly reasonable to go there as a local. Like, they're not probably going to charge you an arm and a leg. Maybe they are. If it's Fantastic Fest, maybe don't do that. But for the most part, you know, you're probably going to be able to go at a reasonable price and see some stuff that, you know, you wouldn't otherwise get a chance to see. And I would just say, be open-minded about it. You know, like South by, the floor is pretty high. Most of the films are pretty good. Austin Film Festival, the floor is pretty low, but I still really enjoy getting those experiences. And I think, you know, if you live in Toronto, like, yeah, go to TIFF. That sounds fucking cool. But like, you know, like I have a friend who lives in like rural Arkansas, and he's like, oh, we have a film festival here. You should come check it out. It's like, oh, I would love to come visit you and go check out that film festival. That sounds cool. I would imagine the quality of those films are not great. But, you know, like if you live in a place that has a festival, I would think it would be worth checking out at least once and just see what the vibe is, see if you like it. You're probably going to see some cool stuff that you otherwise would never have heard of.
Yeah, one of my friends from a previous company, one of my coworkers and friends had recommended that I watch this movie. Well, she found out that I really like watching genre films and watching schlock and those kinds of things. She was like, hey, my cousin was actually in this movie that won the Corpus Christi Horror Film Festival or whatever. Oh. So I watched it and it wasn't great, but it had some really interesting moments to it and some funny things. And the only regret I have about watching it is that I didn't get to go to that local film festival, because it's a moment to engage with. You're not going to, the likelihood of you meeting, you know, James Gunn or Christopher Nolan or Scorsese and getting to pick their brain on something is very low.
Yeah.
But in your local community, there are filmmakers who are scrapping and trying to bring their vision to life. And it's beautiful to see that kind of creative effort being put into something. And even you asking the question of what were you trying to do with this one scene? Like, obviously try to phrase it in a nice enough way, but just asking that question helps them get better in understanding how to communicate with their audience. And it also engages you into that part of the community. It makes you feel like you're a part of something that's helping build. That's what criticism is for. It's supposed to not necessarily tear something down, but help build up better in the future. So I would say, definitely hit up your local film festivals. They've got to have something there and some people you can connect with. And hey, maybe you'll end up being an extra in some other movie, and maybe you'll find out you like something about filmmaking that you didn't know you liked, or film watching you didn't know you liked. But yeah, that's great advice, Dixon. So,
and there's like at Austin Film Festival a few years ago, you know, one of the movies that premiered there, that was like, you know, it's one of the ones that's premiering. You don't necessarily know if it's going to be that great. It was a Jason Mantzoukas movie called The Long Dumb Road that I loved. It was a comedy. Like, Jason Mantzoukas was the lead, and he actually got to be like a fully fledged character.
Oh,
and you know, for the most part, I love Jason Mantzoukas. He's playing side characters that are out of their minds, you know, going crazy, and he's so good at that. But in this, he gets to be the lead and actually go through a whole character arc. And I went to that screening and I like got up and asked him a question and he answered it. And I'm like, oh, that was really cool. And like I met a film critic there, and he like, after he came up, he's like, dude, that was a good question. You asked the best question of anybody there. I was like, oh, that's cool. Thanks, man. So yeah, you know, it's cool. Like, sometimes you get experiences where you like, you know, get to ask people questions that you admire and see, you know, what they think about their movies.
It also helps them feel appreciated, and like that there's visibility and recognition. Like when we went to, even with Disturbance of the Forest, which was a documentary we're both kind of like, oh, you know, B- on, the filmmaker, you know, director and the composer stood up there. And at one point, nobody asked questions to the composer. And I got a little frustrated with that, because everybody was curious more about the interviews and like, why haven't you talked to fans and that stuff?
Yeah.
And I was just like, hey, that score had really good notes, and it's not just John Williams. What did you use? What was your process? And that dude's face lit up. And I was just like, I asked the right question. I was genuinely curious about it. It was great to hear the answer. So yeah, you could be the person out there that really just makes somebody's day and validates their, you know, whole strife and every effort they put into this film. Who knows? But yeah, that's the reason we go. Right? That's the reason I'm going to go now. I want to. So, Awesome. Well, Dixon, thank you so much for the time, man, and walking me through all of the questions I had about South by Southwest and sharing all your picks. It's been great to hear that you got to have a good time. You enjoyed yourself. You got to see a bunch of things. You weren't just stuck on the phone with Banks all the time. Now, hopefully you can rest. But yeah.
I finally got some sleep last night. It was the first night that I've like actually just like been able to like not set an alarm and just like sleep for a long period of time. And
that's nice.
I feel much better today. So
that's good. I'm glad to hear it, buddy. That does it here for us at Afterthoughts. I've been your host, John, and with me, the esteemed guest, my co-host and the film festival fanatic, Michael Dixon.
Yeah. Thanks, John. It was a lot of fun. I love talking about local festivals. And so one of these days I'm going to get you out to a festival.
I promise you, buddy. We're going. I'm going to put it on my calendar. I'm going to go look it up.
As Ron Burgundy would say, I don't believe you. As I light my cigarette over here.
Hey there, movie buffs, TV toughs, and all listeners in between. John here from the Afterthoughts podcast. I just wanted to drop in at the end of this episode and say thanks for listening. If you've got afterthoughts of your own to share, hit us up. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at The Afterpod, or jump into a conversation on our Discord server. You can find info for this and more at theafterpod.transistor.fm. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you on the next episode.